Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Paranormal Saloon. I'm your host, Jay Hill, and tonight, actually, I have a double header. My friend Jen Rose will be in with us here in just a minute, and then I have Kenny Biddle, the skeptic himself. So yeah, it's gonna be a good double feature, and um, I just want to let everybody know thank you for all the support from last night's show with Sarah. I mean, that was a really good show, really fun, and yeah, it was a blast. And I hope to have her on in the future because she's just great, you know. So without further ado, let's get our next guest on, Jen Rose, who's a psychic medium, and basically, I'll just kind of let you hear, her story. Hi, Jen.
Hey Jay, thanks for having me on. I get to warm up for Kenny Biddle. That's kind of awesome.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm glad that you reached out to me, and we've been trying to with the cemetery files. We were going to have you on for last year, it was, but there's
Yeah.
so much stuff going on, and now it's just been since we basically kind of canceled cemetery files because we just don't have time to do it, and with Kelly, being tax preparer, now
hmm
you know, so yeah. So what have you been up to? Why don't you just kind of let everybody know who you are and what's been going on?
All right. Well, I am happy to do that. So yeah, I'm Jen Rose. As Jay so kindly said, I am a psychic medium. I am also an intuitive coach. So I work with coaching clients. And I am also paranormal investigator. And last fall, I had the opportunity to leave my corporate America job as a trainer and start doing this full time to work with clients and to follow what I feel is my calling. And I haven't looked back and I haven't regretted it one bit.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It is very cool, and it's given me time to really focus, get my name and face out there. Because sometimes working that 9 to 5 grind, you can be doing this for
Hmm.
years, but nobody knows who you are.
Oh
So
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm building on that, and I'm here to talk about anything that you want to talk about, Jay.
Okay.
Paranormal mediumship. We can get into all the weird and wild. I
All
don't care.
right. So yeah. So um, speaking of psychic mediums, and I've kind of got about an uphill battle with Kenny in the next couple hours
Yeah, I'm gonna
with
teach.
that. So, um, but that's okay. That's all right. But some of your experiences in the past, can you talk a little bit about why um, you kind of integrated your paranormal with your gifts?
It seemed to me um, really like a natural progression because honestly, I had abilities from the time I was a child,
Hmm.
and I would see spirits, I would hear spirits, and it was weird. It was really weird, and I didn't understand it. And some of them were really frightening. And as we get older, we get into adolescence, we start to kind of shut that stuff down. And about 10 years ago, I was going through some stuff, and all of those abilities started to resurface
Oh,
out of the blue. And to the point where I was like, am I losing my mind? And that's how it started. And I've had a healthy interest in the paranormal my whole
Right.
life. It's
Right.
always fascinated me. Even when I wasn't practicing anything, I just considered myself a regular person. I could still feel things in certain locations,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes pretty strongly, and sometimes it was really frightening.
Mm-hmm.
So when this stuff started to resurface, I decided that I needed to find out exactly what's going on with me,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how to deal with it. And it started from there. And
Right.
then the paranormal, it just kind of dovetailed into that because I had such a fascination with it. And there are historical locations. I'm here in Northern Virginia. You can't throw a stone without hitting a battlefield, Civil War
Right.
battlefield.
Right.
So I would go to different locations, learn the history. I'm a big history buff, and I would always feel things at these locations. And as I started to work on my abilities, my mediumship, getting control of that, it made sense to me to use them in
Mm-hmm.
these locations
Right.
to dig deeper,
Mm-hmm.
and get the stories of these spirits.
Right.
Because
Right.
I mean, as you know, a lot of these places, they just want their stories told
Right. Right.
correctly. So
Right. And that goes hand in hand, in my opinion, too. I mean, I've experienced that even before that. My gifts were kind of that were flourishing, you know, and late in life. But always knew in that sense, and I have always had experiences to the fact of that. So it was more or less just kind of just take and put that on the shelf and say, yeah, I'll get to that later, you know, or
yeah.
something. But so yeah, having like going into certain locations, even if you don't know that the history, or if you are just like I think I said this yesterday, that if even if you go to a restaurant or something that's old, and there's it's almost like history just kind of knocks on your door and says, this is what was here and this is here, and I'm open all the time. You know what I mean? I don't close it down like that. I mean,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
only thing that it works, the way it works for me is basically just I I don't close it down, but because life gets in the way, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's just like, okay, that kind of
It kinda
kicks me.
almost
Yeah, yeah,
naturally shuts you
yeah,
off.
and it
Yeah.
kind of yeah, that's the best way to describe it. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
but even then, even when I'm not in that mode and I'm just in reality and life mode, it can just pop out of nowhere. And I've had that happen quite a few times. So I'm just kind of used to it, which is fine. But going to different locations, especially if you know a little bit of history and it's supposedly haunted or whatnot, you kind of are more open to that. You kind of want to know, what the history is.
Yeah.
I don't like people telling me history. If I ever go on
Yep.
an investigation, I'd be like, keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything, you know, because you and I both know that validation is key, especially for mediums, and
Absolutely.
because I don't want anybody to put anything, like thoughts in my head, or suggestions or whatever, so I kind of keep that out of there. So I just play that I don't want to know
Mhm.
card. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And can you talk a little bit about what was one of your memorable moments that had your gifts integrate with the paranormal?
So, I think the first really memorable moment where they integrated really well and solidly, I had already started working with my mediumship and training. And I live near a location called Weems Bots.
Hmm.
It's now a museum, but it's got a whole long history through the Civil War and before. It was reservation land. It's just a lot is happening there,
Hmm.
and I actually didn't know. the history at the time, but they were doing a Halloween investigation. And it was just, they do these Halloween walks where they take you on the walk and they've got,
Yeah.
a
Hmm.
guide and stuff. And I took my adult son and a girlfriend of mine. And I mean, I was so new to even studying this. I was just like beginning stuff.
Hmm.
We started going through this walk and I was seeing things, I was feeling them.
Hmm.
I was having spirits that are on that land communicating to me, talking to me. Now, unbeknownst to me, the guide who leads the tours is also the museum's on staff paranormal investigator.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and they don't really advertise that they have one or that he's the one leading the tours. But as we started talking and I started he could hear what I was saying because I was telling like my son and my girlfriend. I'm like, okay, there's a shadow right over there.
Hmm.
Things like that. And so he kind of took me aside and he said, "Are you sensitive?" And I said, "Well, I yeah, you could call me that. I'm
Multiple
basically
things.
studying medium."
Yeah.
And he had asked, he said, "Would you be willing to come back at some point privately and investigate with me?" And I was like, "Okay, fine,
I
fine."
love
Because
those invitations.
yeah, and I
You
was
know.
like, "Yeah, that's great." And it was like, it's like not even 30 minutes from my house, and I'm like, "Well, this is convenient."
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So that's really how the blend kind of started between the two, and then learning really that mediums can be really helpful on investigations if they have no prior knowledge of that
Hmm.
history. But
Right.
teams who bring them in who do work with them,
Hmm.
can get information that can later be verified or, hey, no, this is incorrect. But it's
Hmm.
a really helpful thing. And it's also helpful with locations that I have found have a lot of rumors to them
Hmm.
that are considered fact, but they're
Right.
not really the
They're
fact.
right. And there's a lot of that. So
Yes.
you kind of got to, so especially people with gifts, you really have to weed through a lot of that kind of that nonsense.
Yeah.
It's almost like they want it to be true. So let's make it
Yeah,
up,
they do.
let's spread a rumor. And the sad thing is that most of the time, some of those rumors, last for years. And then until somebody comes along and say, yeah, I don't see that, you know, and then you're proved wrong, and then you're wrong. And then they're like, okay. And then they, oust you in that sense. So rumors are very dangerous in that sense. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
finding the correct history of certain locations
Yes. It's it's
is
really
key.
important.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
You know what I mean?
really
So yeah, I've ran into that before in a couple different places where I've heard one story here and then I've seen the other story here, and it's like, yeah, they're close but not quite.
Mhm.
And then
Absolutely.
when they would do the research, when somebody else would do the research,
Yeah.
then they'd be like, well, Jay's right. That's it's close, but it's not that close,
Mhm.
you know.
Exactly.
So yeah,
And
I mean, it's one of those things where you gotta mediums have to tread lightly, especially when they do investigations like that. You know what I mean? I do remote investigations for the team that I'm a part of is K2 Paranormal with Kelly, and
mhm.
when they are at a location and they're most of the time if they're they have a lot of sensitives and gifted people on the team anyway, so I kind of like help them when they need help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm kind of behind the scenes, but I have helped other teams who needed a online remote viewer.
Mhm.
Because they were stuck or they had something and they couldn't figure it out. So I have helped in that sense, and I love doing that. I can do it at the comfort of my own home. I don't have to drive far away. You know, and that's I kind of advertise myself for that. I don't charge for that or whatever. It's just
Oh
the
no,
fact that
no.
I would rather be able to do that to help out a team and to, you know, kind of educate them on certain things. And so yeah, I mean, it's and having people in the paranormal field, especially when researchers and you have friends who are history buffs, it kind of goes back to the old adage of find like-minded people to surround yourself with, and that is key.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's really important. And I have the interesting thing is that, and I do a lot of remote views as well. Up until very recently, I was a member of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. I do a lot of remote views for them. And I enjoy doing that too. But I really do like, if I can, to get to a location. There's just
Hmm.
something that is almost, it gives me almost a clearer sense. I'll pick up the same things remotely, but
Hmm.
then if I'm on a location, I can bring that into sharp focus.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But a lot of times, one of the things that I ran into when I first started doing this and started doing the mediumship and looking at it and really kind of wanting to work with paranormal teams at that time, there were a lot of teams that didn't want to work with a medium.
They
So
wanted the ones to be the ones to find the information, they
yeah,
wanted that validation. You know what I
yes,
mean? And
hmm,
it's not the fact that I there are a lot of different mediums and a lot of different gifted people out there, and I always firmly believe this. I always have, that no medium are this there's no medium that is the same as another medium. We're all different, so we can bring similar things to the table, but they're unique. That's why it makes every human unique and individual. That's why we're individuals, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So but there's mediums that I call them armchair mediums that think they're gifted and they're not, or
There's a lot of
they
those
don't they don't exercise proper etiquette in that sense. If you're in it for just money, you're in the wrong business. You
uh,
know what I mean?
yeah.
And if
I
you want to help people, that's a different story.
Then you help people. And we run into that, Jay. We run into that all over the place, unfortunately.
Hmm.
I I see a lot of what I, nothing against TikTok, but TikTok mediums who do some
Yeah,
readings and they
yeah,
get a following on TikTok, and then suddenly I'm a medium, and yeah, you should hire me, and I'm going to be teaching all these classes. And it's like,
right, right,
really?
right,
Okay.
right.
so, so
Yeah,
it's, yeah, yeah.
and it's funny because mediums know mediums,
Yes, they do.
and
They do.
so it's kind of like, if you're not, we're gonna call you out on that. You know what I mean? If it's something that is affecting me personally, or one of my friends or something like that, or we just you're doing somebody a disservice.
You are.
Yeah, you know, I do believe that everybody has that ability to be gifted that way, but it's just whatever path that you're on. If mediumship or sensitivity or empathic or whatever is not part of your journey, then there's something else that your path has on it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't say that everybody can be, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's like we all have the ability to be. I'm not saying that
Ev-
all need to be. You
Everyone
know what I
has the
mean?
ability to be, and actually, one of my mentors is Cindy Kaza, and
Mhm.
she has this great saying, is that we all have the ability to learn how to play the piano, but not all of
Mhm.
us have the ability to be concert pianists.
right. And that's the best way to put it, you know? And so, I mean, there's there's people that can only do Twinkle Twinkle Little Star so much before people
Hmm.
like, "Hey, you can't play," you know?
Yeah.
And that goes back to the same thing with mediumship, you know?
Hmm.
And now I'm not saying that, every medium, and not every medium, but I mean, I'm sure that real mediums and real gifted people have stumbled and have
They have.
been put on the blocks and ridiculed, and I've been there, done that, been
Hmm.
laughed at,
Me
hysterically
too.
laughed at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is part of that, I don't sit there and say, "I'm gonna be a millionaire, I'm gonna make this money," that wasn't my
No.
intention from ever getting into that, you know what I mean? I mean,
Mm-mm.
and it but that's it but here's the thing, in the past, when I was starting out, yeah, at one point, I was charging people to do readings, and then I kinda thought about it, I'm like, I would get more satisfaction of just helping people and
Hmm.
not charging them because, yeah, I know that I could make money to help me make a living, but it was a conscious decision to just not follow that path.
Hmm.
I didn't wanna be every other medium that was trying to either get a TV show or a practice or whatever. I mean, if that's your goal and that's what you're good at, then so be it. I'm not
Right.
trying to crash anybody's parade or
No.
nothing like that, but as everybody's different, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not saying that my way of not charging or not doing that is better because it's just for me. You know what I mean? It's my personal opinion. Everybody has a different, view on mediumship, and that's fine,
Hmm.
And so I don't try to condemn anybody for doing what they want to do, but if you're going to do something like that, it's comes with a really great responsibility to make sure that you're not hurting the person more than you're helping them.
Exactly. Because the first rule, honestly, should be do no harm, just like it is for medical professionals. It should be
Mhm.
that for mediums. And I don't knock anyone who has these abilities and they want to use it for free just to help people as they can.
Mhm.
There are, I
Right.
mean, I would never ever charge for paranormal services or checking things out like that.
No.
Absolutely not. I have
No.
seen mediums do that.
Right.
But I would never do that. That's not what this is about. Working with clients is different for me, and teaching,
Mhm.
which is one of my passions, and it's what I did in my regular job as corporate trainer,
Mhm.
is really something that I'm very passionate about. But I'm also really big on the ethics of it, the ethics of
Mhm.
mediumship, but also the ethics of working with students.
Mhm.
Because if you get someone who hasn't been trained properly, they can do a lot of harm. A lot
Mhm.
of harm.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think that they're doing it, "Oh, I'm doing this for a service. I'm doing this, because I wanna do," you have to really whatever your intention was or is, because a lot of people a true medium, a medium that practices what they preach basically is if your intention when you look at helping somebody is what is my intent to do so? What do I have? What is to gain or lose from
Right.
this?
Right.
You know what I mean? So you got to put yourself in
Mhm.
that position of thinking that way, of gaining or
Right.
losing. Are you going to feel bad because this person you're going to tell them the truth, or whatever the reason is, but your intention has to be honest, true, and real. Because if that's not the reason that you're doing this, or that you're trying, you think you're helping somebody, you're really
Yeah,
not.
you're not.
Because then that's when ego comes in, and that's when people think, oh, I don't care, and I'm just trying to make money and this and that. It's like, well, that's you're in the wrong
Yeah,
place. You know what I
and
mean?
I completely agree
And
with that. It really does have
mhm,
to, it has to do with your intention, and you have to do a lot of internal work to make that decision and to You
Oh
understand
yeah.
why you are doing this. Are you just doing this because you want to be recognized? Are
Right.
and I see that a lot. Um,
Uh-huh. That's a hard truth to come
yeah,
across. You know what I mean? It's like that old saying of, the preacher is standing on the pulpit and he says, "If I'm not saying anything that's not making you squirm in your seat, then I'm not doing my job."
exactly. Exactly.
So,
And also you
yeah.
have to think about the consequences for yourself personally. If you are working one-on-one with clients, these can be clients who are coming with some pretty horrific circumstances.
Right. Right.
And it
Mhm.
takes a toll. Are you able to deal with that? Are you able to
Right.
deal with receiving this information and being able to convey it in a responsible way?
Right. 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 Are you able to unpack what luggage they're bringing you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is, and usually when, there, I don't really do mediumship readings like I used to. I'm more focused on my shows
Mhm.
and doing, some remotes and stuff like that. I just didn't feel that my heart and my mind wasn't all, there all the time in that
Right.
sense. You know what I mean? So I kind of limit myself of, what I can do and what I want to do and what I need to do and this and that. So it's kind of, not to say that that won't change, but just right now, the certain path that I have is this is where it's at. I don't deny my gifts. I don't, I just, kind of put them on the back
Mhm.
burner, in certain
Yeah.
things, and everybody does it,
I I know a
So
lot
that
of really
and
talented mediums who don't work with clients at all.
hmm
It's something that they may do if they are part of a paranormal team. They may do it occasionally by
hmm
word of mouth, but
hmm
it's not a daily thing where they're
right,
working with clients. And
right,
that's
right,
perfectly fine. I mean, that's a valid path.
right,
Everybody
right.
has to decide what's
hmm
what's right for them.
right, because the fact that also when life happens and the reality of things of life happen to you, that can take its toll on your spiritual walk and your gifts. And so it's kind of like, do I tend to this problem that I'm having or these issues that I'm having,
Right.
or do I just ignore that and then just go back to my gifts and then just do it because that makes me feel better? No, it's
No.
kind of like you have to realize that that old saying of, you know, what does it say? You have to take life on life's terms. And
Yes.
I hate that saying because it's true.
It's horrible. It's
It is,
horrible. It's a
you know.
horrible saying. My
Yeah.
my favorite one is, and it's funny because I actually just did a short video on this, is learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable.
True. True. Very
A-
much so.
And that is such a fact of life on
Right.
this path,
Mhm.
regardless of how
Mhm.
you're working or who you're working with.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this
Right.
honestly isn't for the faint of heart. And
No. Oh
and
god, no.
it
God, it's like coming out of the proverbial
yeah.
closet, you know?
Yeah.
I mean
Oh, I know. I
I
know.
mean,
I
yeah,
know.
and that is it was horrific for me, I mean, it was, gosh, it went against everything that I believed in. Not against everything, but I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of it, but I had to come to terms with what made me feel uncomfortable to be
Right.
comfortable. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I had to deal with that
Yeah.
accordingly,
I went
you
through
know?
the same thing because I was like, when I first started, my whole intention was I'm going to learn to understand these abilities. I'm going to learn to be able to control them so I don't become so overwhelmed with them. Right.
Mhm,
And that was my
mhm.
whole intention. And I told my husband over and over again, I'm never going to do this professionally. You got to be kidding me. No, no.
Right.
Who wants that headache? Who wants that level of ridicule? Because
Mhm.
And that's not where the path led. It led a very different place to where I am now. And I had to work through all of that. Okay, well, how do I let my friends know? I have a brother who
Right.
is a minister. And I was
Yeah.
terrified to tell him. I was
Oh yeah. Oh
scared.
yeah.
I
Oh
was
yeah.
so scared to
Yeah.
tell him because I didn't want him to tell me I was going to hell. And I'm like, yeah,
Right, 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 and that is, I mean, what we've been raised on, and what
yeah,
we've,
of
heard,
course.
and society teaches us, and
Yeah.
this and that. But like Boomer D said, it does take a certain level of constitution to be able to do
Hmm.
it, and rightly or wrongly, whether you believe or whether you don't, I have a fantastic relationship with Christ. I'm not afraid to say that,
Me too.
and
Me too.
you know, I just, gosh, I mean, I told people this on yesterday's show too. If you want a really good story of how I became who I became and how I became from the beginning, there's an episode, I think it's 2 or 3, of Studio 6 Paranormal Memoirs. And I storytelling time, and I just tell this story, and I'm not a narcissist, for one. I don't like to really listen to myself talk, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, ugh, you know. But when I listened back at that episode of of where my beliefs and where my spiritual path started in that sense, um, I really liked
Yeah.
it because I was telling my
Yeah.
truth. And that to me is when you start telling your truth, people really do listen, and people really, you know, can
Hmm.
relate. There's a reason why people, maybe feel uncomfortable about telling the truth, but feel so much good after they do so.
And I was the same way because I will tell you my biggest fears with my family, my brother specifically, didn't come to
Mhm.
pass.
Mhm.
He's like, mom was like that. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, I got a little bit of
Mhm.
it too. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And he accepts
Right.
me. And it's not there was never any condemnation. Did I lose some friends on the way? Yeah, I did because they didn't know how to deal with me. Once I was completely open and authentic, not realizing you don't have to treat me any differently than you did before. This doesn't
Mhm.
change anything. I'm not going to be sitting there trying to read your mind when we go to dinner.
Right, it
It
doesn't
doesn't
work
work
that way.
that
It's what
way.
people are just like, "Oh my gosh." People who don't understand it, or are afraid of it. You know what I mean? If they don't understand or they don't believe it, they're afraid of it, and then they
Yeah.
lash back, or they lash out or whatever. And I run into that often. You know what I mean? Because they don't understand it, so they're afraid of it. You know, having a good conversation about it and discussing
Hmm.
it and saying, if I truly felt
Yeah.
that I was wrong, or that I was like, I would feel it in my gut. I mean, I would literally, a lot of my intuition is in my gut,
Yeah.
and it's not, you know, indigestion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just kind of, so you and I, it sounds like you and I both have had to, deal with that, that coming of age type thing, and
And that's what it is. It is a coming of
right,
age.
right. No matter what age you are, and especially, with people with gifts and people wanting to, you know, make a change or something like that. A lot of people are afraid to make any type of change like that, for simple reason that um they're afraid.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I've been like that. I'm still like that in
Mhm.
certain areas. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I have to question myself all the time. I'm like, am I doing this way I'm supposed to be doing it? And I mean, but when I align myself with my beliefs and my faith, and things like that, that's when I start to get synchronicities. And that's
Yeah.
when I start to see numbers. That's when I start to, get, little feelings of, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Or something
Yeah.
like that. You know what I mean? So there's little things like that are telltale signs, and some people don't realize that. If you wonder why your life sucks, take a step back and look and say, what
Yeah.
is it that I am doing that's
Mhm.
causing am I causing this, or am I allowing this to happen?
Right. I mean, I actually one of my big things recently was getting back into alignment because I got into this place kind of little before the holidays and kind of leading up afterwards a bit where nothing felt right to me.
Mhm.
And I felt like I was not doing what I was supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
And it took honestly breaking it back down, going back in, okay, why am I doing this?
Mhm.
What are my reasons? And looking at that again and making the adjustments
Mhm.
to realign to make sure that I'm living in my own authenticity, that I am not trying to teach people or tell people things that I don't believe myself.
Right, right.
And we can fall into that just like everybody else.
We're human. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We're not some spectacular being. We're
Mhm.
human. We're all, we're part of the human race,
Yeah, of
you know?
course.
I mean, some other people have different gifts for different reasons, I mean, and it's just you go back and you look at, there's certain people who grew up, like say let's say go back to like the 50s and 60s or even the 40s and 50s.
Right.
That's my parents' era, and things were simple, and there were still, gifted people and mediums and this and that, but they weren't widely known. You know what
No.
I mean?
Mm-mm.
So it's kind of like it's almost like nowadays. I mean, the mediumship has been more accepting. You know what I mean? In that sense, gifted people and this and that. There's still a lot of people out there that don't believe
Right.
in it. But I mean, there
Yeah,
it's for society reasons. I think it's more accepted than it has been,
it is.
but it's always been there. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like you have to go back and think, you know, if this was just a fad, like the spiritualism back in the 1900s, if this
Mhm.
was just a fad, why did it survive so long?
Why is it still here and
Right,
thriving today?
right, right.
Yeah.
I mean, and some of that, like we talked about with, people who want to make money. I get it, this and that, but
Mhm.
there are more people out there who are quiet mediums.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That that just don't want to be put in the limelight. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if
Right.
people, maybe we should research that and try to find out what is the basis or some of the beginnings of mediumship and this and that, because there's got to be something to it.
There's a lot to it, and I would actually love to interview various mediums who mm, effectively operate in different ways, in different styles.
Hmm.
And also just to kind of get, okay, what is it that is leading you on this path? Um,
Right.
you know,
There's a reason.
there's a reason for it. The other thing I would love to research, and this is just something that is, I mean, it's anecdotal, and I just know it from the number of mediums I know who came to their mediumship. And yeah, they may have had experiences in childhood and stuff like that, but they really came into it after like seriously traumatic stuff. I mean, that was my story.
Hmm.
I want to know
Yeah.
what triggered that hit. What was it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I go back and I just, and I think about it, and even go back to the paranormal.
Mhm.
It's like Yeah, and it seems like some of these things go into phases, different phases, more stronger than
Mhm.
others. But I remember like watching paranormal shows, when they first came out,
Me too.
and like
Me
Ghost
too.
Hunters, and I
Yeah.
loved it. You know what I mean? And I thought it was just awesome. But I remember, and nothing against that show, but when I first saw the first episode, I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be so awesome," and nothing
Mhm.
happened. And I was like, "That's lame." I was like, but I, I mean, and even onward. I mean, back in the early days, I mean, I think we realized that some of the shows that came
Yeah.
after that, I think some of the producers like, we got to make some stuff happen,
Yeah.
and that's when ratings started to go up and this and that. But people like us, we would watch and be like,
No.
No, that doesn't work that way, and that's not real, or that's not, and so I can't watch any of those. Some of them I can,
It depends.
you know what I
I
mean?
It
It
depends on the
depends.
show. It
Yeah.
really, really
Right.
depends, but
Right.
there are
Right.
very few now that I
There's a lot of them. There's some of them are scripted. I'm not gonna name
no,
names or
no.
nothing like that, but I mean, there's been a dozen on, and there's some that I really like,
Mhm.
and for that entertainment
Yeah.
factor. But I mean, it's kind of like, but when I watch those shows now, it's like my gifted brain is automatically there and like, no, absolutely not, and I'm like, oh gosh,
I
I can't watch it, enjoy it. You know what I mean? And
No,
I just,
no.
I'm like,
What I
okay,
will do with certain ones that are really egregious is I will do what I will
right,
call hate watch, just so I can point
yeah,
out every little thing.
yep, yep. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So how bad are we? That's terrible.
I know, I
But
know,
yeah,
I know, I
yeah.
know, but it's just
And
like,
it's
this
kind of
is what
sad because,
you're doing.
it's kind of
It
sad because I mean there'll be times where I'll be watching a regular TV show,
is.
you
Mhm,
know,
mhm.
and I'm like, that person did it. I'm like, damn it. And
I
then
know,
nine
I hate
times out of
that.
ten, and I'll pick, it's just kind of like you just know,
Mhm.
the script. It's almost like you're peeking in and seeing, it's like turning to the last page of the
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
you know, often.
I do
Like,
too.
yeah, that was great. Yeah, yeah. I don't
Mhm.
watch too much TV. I mean, I'll go back to watching MASH, you know? I'll go back
Yeah,
to watching,
I'll
you
watch a
know,
lot of, like, old stuff too.
that like and like the Golden Girls and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I
I know.
mean, just but some of the shows today, it just, I don't
Well,
know.
it's hard, and it's hard, especially,
Mhm.
if it's, a paranormal show, and then it's just like,
Yeah.
"Alright, click."
I just could not really, I mean, after a while, it just got to the point where I got no enjoyment out of it because
Mhm.
nothing surprised me. You know,
Yeah.
10 years ago, I'd be like, "Oh gosh, I mean, that's kinda cool," you know? I remember watching an episode. I won't say who, but it was the first show, and this was back in mid-2000s,
Mhm.
and I watched the first episode, and I saw what appeared to be a board that flew through the air, and I was like, just like, "Oh my gosh," you know?
Yeah.
Now, I would see that, I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And I would be able to see if it was real or not, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in that sense of watching that first episode of this particular program and seeing that, legit, I mean, to me, that was legit, and I was like, now
Right.
that I look back at it, and I think that's why that a lot of these shows had, somebody had a light bulb come on and say, "We can make a lot of money doing this, and
Mhm.
why don't we do
Yeah.
this and do that?" And that's fine. If that's what you wanna do, go ahead and do it, you know? I would rather watch a TV show that had a lot of history, you know what I
Me too.
mean? And something that um, even mediums or even investigators can put a stamp on it to find out the truth behind untold history or something, or a medium helping a spirit cross over or do something with substance. You know what I mean?
I am the same way. I'm a huge fan of documentaries. I
Right,
am a
right,
ginormous history nerd.
right.
So, and it's digging in deeper,
Hmm.
um, just to see, okay, well, what else can we find out? What else can we
Hmm.
find out?
Right, right.
My Yeah, I mean, it's just my honestly though, I will say I do have kind of a latest obsession as far as like paranormal things go,
Right,
and that's
right,
like the UAP UFO thing.
right, right.
Because I'm just kind of, this is fascinating, and there's some interconnectedness, but I'm not exactly sure what. So it's kind of like captured my attention right now. So.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like people say, "Well, what are you thinking about the UAPs and aliens?" And I'm like, to me, it's old hat. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? I'm like, dude, they've been in here forever.
they've been
It's
here.
it's it's old
Yeah.
news. And I don't know. And the same thing with Bigfoot. Now, Kelly, my other host to Paranormal Triangle, she is a big Bigfoot fan. I'm not.
Mhm.
I really don't care. I hate to say that, but I mean, I can respect people whose fascination with it. That's great.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
that's what your thing is, that's great. I personally don't have a opinion on. I kind of do, but I usually, you know, get in trouble for
Yeah.
that opinion.
I mean, do I have an opinion on Bigfoot? I do, but is it an obsession of mine or a
Right,
fascination?
right,
It's
right.
not.
No, no.
Um, yeah. So, you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just so everybody's in different things, and that's great.
Mhm.
I mean, there's regular people who don't use their gifts, who aren't gifted that way. Are more into accounting, or they like numbers, or they like writing books or writing. You know what I mean? So that's a gift in itself.
Yeah,
You know,
it
I mean,
is.
people that can rattle numbers off their head like that. That's that's a gift. I
Mhm.
suck with numbers. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna be
no,
honest. So
I'm lucky I can do some very basic math in my head. So
right, right,
is
right.
that is where I am. My husband is in IT consulting. He owns a firm.
Hmm.
He codes, and it's fascinating to watch how quickly, and in this language that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Hmm. Right, right.
And I'm
And I'm
like,
I'm the same way. I'm like, okay, I didn't take algebra. I did it. I understood it one time. That was it.
yeah,
No thanks. So yeah, but
yeah, yep,
I think that since I've got the other show, I think we're gonna wrap up a little bit early. We're
okay,
almost 50 minutes, almost an hour. So
yeah,
but
because
yeah, I have to transcend or transition into the next program. So, but I want to thank you so much for coming on. We've had a great conversation, and you
well,
know,
I appreciate it. Thank you so
yeah.
much for
So,
having.
why don't you tell people where they can find you?
Oh, right. Well, you can certainly find me on social media, Facebook, Jen Rose Medium. Same thing on Instagram. My website is jenrosemedium.com. I welcome people reaching out. I welcome questions. Yeah, I love to interact with people. One of my favorite things to do is to answer questions that people may have about mediumship or psychic phenomena, things like that. I love it. So yeah, reach out to me, talk to me. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and you can find this episode will be on Studio Six Media Productions on YouTube, as well as wherever you get your podcast. I mean, if you're on iHeartRadio or Spotify, yeah, we're this show is just a part of Studio Six, so it's just under that moniker. So when you're looking up um, Paranormal Saloon, you'll have to look under Studio 6 Media Productions and you'll find us. So thank everybody. I want to thank my guest again. And come back in about half hour or so. And I'll have Kenny Biddle on the next episode on the double feature.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So I'm your host, Jay Hill, and I want to thank you, Jen, again.
Thank you, Jay.
And we will be out.